So welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be showing you the jobs I'm doing in my home garden and my allotment in the month of November. So I'm going to be showing you some of the things I'm actually doing and some of the other jobs you can be doing. And at the end I'm going to give you a summary of all those jobs you can be doing so you know exactly what can be done this month. So first of all, I am sowing some peas and some broad beans into module trays. If you just come into the summer house. So I'm going to be starting off some peas and broad beans. These are a variety that the Budget Seed Company have sent me. They're a new variety and it's especially good for overwintering. So it's early onward pea and broad bean aquadulse. So the first thing I've done is I have soaked my peas overnight. So I get like little plastic tubs, it could be anything, a dish or whatever you've got. And what I do to start them off, because it's much easier if they've already sprouted, I put them in a bowl like this or a little container. I covered them with water, soaked them overnight, and over the last couple of days, after the first night, I strain off all the excess water. I then put a little bit of damp tissue over the top, and then within a couple of days, most of them have started to sprout. And the reason I do this is because sometimes when you put them straight into the soil, they don't germinate very well and they just rot, and you also end up planting ones that don't germinate. So it's a really handy way. Any peas, broad beans, runner beans, I've done exactly the same with the broad beans there. Now, although I could sow them straight into the soil, you know, the packets say they can go direct into the soil or they can go into module trays. It's often better to keep them in an unheated greenhouse or summer house like I'm going to do, to protect them when you first start them off, because if you did get a really harsh frost or a snow, it could finish them off, and they do easily get eaten this time of year, more than what they would do in the summer. So I'm going to start mine off in module trays and keep them in here. So if I show you how I do that, I've got some trays that I've had for other plants I've had, and I just save them. So it's really good to reuse them because it's good for the environment, and it also saves us a bit of money as well. So I've got some multi-purpose compost down here. I've got a peat-free one, which is obviously a lot better for the environment. So at some point I think we won't be able to buy any composts that do have peat in it, so you might as well get used to it now if you've not been used to using it. So I'll just get the compost and then just fill the trays. I'm going to fill them just over half full. Really easy to do. Like that, there we go. I'm going to do two because I'll probably put about 2 or 3 per module tray. Otherwise I'd have loads and loads of module trays if I put one in each one, and these are quite big trays as well. I decided to go for bigger little module trays rather than smaller ones because they've just got more compost in them and they'd easily outgrow the other ones. They obviously break down any bits of compost that is a bit lumpy. You don't want really hard lumpy bits of compost. So let's try and do them about even. They will look a little bit higher than they actually are, but once you put some water on these, because I will water these in after I've sown them, they will drop down. So just bear that in mind when you do them, that it looks like they're going up a little bit higher, but as soon as I add a bit of water to that, they probably will drop down a little bit. So there we go, they're all about half full. Now at this point it's easier to take your gloves off now. And then with the peas, so you just pop them into the compost. So I'm going to do about 2 per tray, like that. Really simple, keeping them like separated apart a little bit so that they can grow independently. So the first little bit that grows is actually the root. So you try and get it towards the bottom, but don't worry too much. It's a strange thing with peas and with beans. If you don't put them in quite right, they do normally find their way round the correct way. go, so that's my peas done. I will obviously need to label those up. And now to do my broad beans, so I'm going to do a couple of trays of those as well. There we go. So same thing again, just fill it up with compost, just over halfway up. So here are my broad beans, exactly the same thing. They've been started off, and you can see the first little sprouts started to come out. So I'll just push that into there, and then I'll cover that with a bit more compost. I think I'll try and do 2 in some of the modules, but I haven't got quite so many of these. So I'll lay these out. That one's not split, can you see what I mean? That one probably would have been a wasted one. I'll leave that in the container a little bit longer just to see whether it does anything, but that's why it's another really good reason to soak them. I think most of these have actually germinated, which is really, really good. But there's nothing stopping you doing this, and like I say, the ones that haven't sprouted, even if it's just a tiny bit, you can see there it's just started to sprout, that can go in. All I want to see is that they've actually still germinated, so that they are good to go, because like I say, if you put them in the soil, the tendency is for them to rot really easily, and they are just less likely to do that when you do it like this. And it's a bit disheartening, if I'm honest, when you plant a load of plants and then they don't do what you hoped for them to do, wondering whether they're going to come up or not. And if you do them like this, even though that one looks a little bit strange, I'm going to put that in anyway because it's got a sprouty bit on it. And those ones I'm just going to leave in the soaked tissue. There's only 3 there that didn't. I'm going to leave them in the soaked tissue just to see whether they do sprout, and then if they do, I can just plant those ones, can't I? But for the time being, I'm going to leave them. And then all I just need to do is just to cover these, like so. Really simple, really quick. So if you haven't got an unheated greenhouse, you could try putting them direct into the soil, or if you've got somewhere where you're prepared to keep them over the winter on a very sunny windowsill. So if you've got like a conservatory or something, or a really sunny window, but obviously you've got to be prepared to have plants there in your house all the time. So I'm quite lucky. I have got a conservatory, I have got a summer house. My greenhouse needs a little bit more TLC, but hopefully we're going to get that sorted this year. So there we go, that's 2 trays of broad beans all ready. All I need to do now is just to water them, which I will do in a minute. But for now, I'm going to show you what else I'm doing in the garden. So I'm going to get my scissors. We head over, grab my basket. So as you can see, everything looks a little bit battered. I don't know where everyone else is in the country, but we had really horrendous amounts of wind and rain, and it's kind of battered everything. So if you've gone out in your garden and thought what on earth happened, I thought exactly the same too. The good thing is everything's pretty much finished anyway, so it's not such a disaster. I just pulled off the last of most of my tomatoes anyway, just before the wind happened. Just by coincidence, most of my tomatoes were ripe anyway, so I pulled off what I had. And what I'm left with is basically the tomatoes that I've either split or really aren't going to do an awful lot. Now, I haven't got much left on here. I'm going to quickly go over with the basket and see if there's anything else I can pick off. And then I'm going to pull up these tomato canes. Now, some of them are okay. If they're nearly ripe, I don't generally like ripening green tomatoes, and I don't like making things out of green tomatoes, if I'm honest with you. So I leave all my tomatoes on for as long as I possibly can. Now, pretty much all of mine have either ripened, or if they've really damaged badly and split, and they're really bad, I'm going to just compost them anyway. But I've had a really good year, and I'm quite lucky that most of my stuff has actually completely ripened now. So I think it's definitely time to take the canes up. So if you're in the same situation as me, then you can do exactly the same. The few tomatoes that I have got that are green, I will just take them off and pop them on the windowsill. But I definitely don't want to be in the position where I've got baskets and baskets full. So I think if only having a couple of green tomatoes is all I've got, then I think I've had a really good yield this year. So now all I'm going to do is just start to take and clear the mess that has ensued with the winds that we've had. Now, this is probably one of the most boring jobs, I think, taking it all down. And if I'm honest, I often leave it and leave it and leave it. But this year I thought I'd get a little bit more organised and get the dead, or the, you know, soon to be dead plants removed, and then get this area cleared ready for next year, because it's not going to produce an awful lot more now. So all it's going to do is look more and more untidy as the year goes on. So I'm going to get these out now. So in no time at all, I've cleared the tomatoes and the aubergines. The stakes are all nicely and neatly put away, and all I've got to do is just compost the tomato and the aubergine plants. If we move over to the summer house, I've got my beans and my peas all sown. So I've obviously sown them all, I've marked all of them so I know what's what, and obviously I've given them a little bit of water. I've just got one water label up here. And this is the broad bean. Now it's always worth putting, when you label things properly, because we all think we're going to remember what we've planted and the variety that we've planted, and we don't. So I've actually put on there broad bean aquadols, so I know exactly what's in there. And I'm obviously going to give it a little bit of raw water as well, so it's really important to make sure you keep these moist. So I'm going to water these today, and if I need to, if the soil sinks down a little bit or one of the peas or beans floats to the top, I will obviously put a little bit more on there, and I will just keep an eye on those as they steadily progress. So, and now we're going to head up to the allotment and I can show you the jobs I'm doing up there. So we're now up the allotment, and the next job I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be covering my kale. If you've got any brassicas that are uncovered, it is worth covering them. I had mine covered for a while, but they outgrew the cover that they had, and I was hoping they were going to be okay, because the chance of the white cabbage butterfly is quite unlikely, but the pigeons unfortunately are still alive and kicking, as you can see. So I've had a bit of nibbling going on there, and my general experience is once they start having a nibble, they'll be back for more. So I'm now going to stake up my brassicas. I'm going to cover my brassicas. Another job you can be doing is staking them as well, but unfortunately I didn't bring any string with me. Mine are actually pretty much still holding their own at the moment, but I will probably stake them at some point, but I need string for that, and unfortunately today I didn't have any string, and the scissors I did have up here don't seem to be doing the job that they normally do. So just going to be putting these into the ground. my stakes are all in. Hopefully I've pushed them down far enough, and I put a bottle over the top. One, obviously, so you don't poke your eye out, and two, so when I put the netting over, the netting doesn't tear through the netting. The kind of netting that I use is actually kind of like a scaffolding netting. It's really, really handy, it's really durable, and actually I used to buy lots of the thin butterfly netting and the bird netting, and it used to break really, really quickly, and then someone suggested getting this scaffolding netting, and I don't think I've ever thrown a bit away because it's much more durable. I'm not saying you don't get like little tears and things in it, but it's far more durable than the other stuff that I've used before. So we will try and find a link in the description if you want to get that to cover your brassicas with. So now all I've got to do is just hang the netting over. I might have to push the canes down a little bit more, but we'll see. As you can see, the kale's grown up so much, you've got to have quite a bit of height with it because you don't want to squash your brassicas down. But it should be fine. The really good thing with a lot of this netting, it is quite wide, so it does a really good job. So as you can see, the kale is covered, a little bit rudimentary. The other good thing with this is when you're lining it up, because it's got a line down the middle, you can tell whether it's central or not, so that makes it really handy. So yeah, the kale's all protected from the pigeons, so I've got an early warning sign of a little nibble rather than them clearing the whole lot, so I'm very pleased about that. So if we just move over, I'm just going to take a look at my beetroot because I could do with some for home. So as we wander over, so the leeks are doing really well. I've started digging those. The lettuces are still looking fantastic. It's getting quite cold now, so they might not last much longer, but I'm really glad for as long as they do. So I love beetroot. I think I've said before that I just kind of like pick it as I need it. I'll just pick the biggest ones first. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to make with it, but I'm going to look some recipes up online when I get home. And if nothing else, I can just boil it or grate it. That's some of my favourite things, to be fair. So there you go, that's a nice, I've got the cylindrical ones there today. So quite a nice beetroot. First time I've grown them, and they've done really, really well. So that's all I'm going to do up the allotment for today. But there are plenty of things that you can be doing and that I will be doing through the rest of November. So you can start pruning your raspberries, black currants, gooseberries, red currants, white currants, that sort of thing. You've got a few months to do it in, so you don't have to do it all this month. I try and get it done in November or December. The other things I'll be doing, I will be staking up some of my brassicas that are getting quite tall and leggy, because if I don't, they're going to break over, and the last thing I want to do is to lose any of my precious plants that I've been nurturing along for such a long time. I will also be doing a little bit more weeding. I will be doing some mulching and also putting some ground cover down as well. So the areas that I've not got anything on and that I won't be putting anything on during the winter, I will be covering those, so that'll make life easier for me in the spring. And there are of course some seeds that you could be planting as well. So if you don't know what you can plant at the moment, I have got a video that you can watch, and it'll give you some ideas of what you can sow or plant now. Now I do hope you've enjoyed the tour around the allotment and the jobs I've been doing today. If you've got any questions, if you've liked what you've seen, if you can give us a like and put something in the comments.